Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome into WNBA Today here on SportsGrid TV. What a conversation. What a couple segments we have ahead of us right now, because last week when you all joined us here on WNBA Today, we were starting to talk about the playoff picture becoming molded. We were talking about scenarios. We were talking about the seeds, the format, all of the things in preparation of the postseason. And now on this Friday, it's time to talk about the playoff picture. We went from molding things to cementing them, and we've got playoff action going down on Sunday. So first and foremost, let's check out the final standings as these teams closed out the WNBA season. We, of course, no surprise here. You have the New York Liberty sitting atop, closing out their season, regular season that is, 32-8. One of the top teams, if not the top team in the WNBA. And I preference it by saying one of, because if you've watched WNBA Today, then you know exactly which team I have as my, title odds winner. Hopefully, fingers crossed. We'll get back to that later on in the segment. And then right below, you got the Minnesota Lynx. Did I hint to it enough? I think so. 30-10, a team that has just been rolling hot since coming back from the Olympic break. Right below them, you got the Connecticut Sun, 28-12. I will say this, regardless of my bias, this is the team that has been noted across the sports books to keep a very close eye on. The only thing that made anyone weary about this team was that they had some spotty and inconsistent moments coming out of the break, but a number of teams did. That fatigue played into a number of players, and then weathering some injury storms. You get where I'm going with this. This is a team that now, with health being more formidably on their side, with both sides of the ball, offensive, defense, stacking and being more consistent, a lot of people want you to be eyeballing the Connecticut Sun, hoping, searching for that first title win, but you got to make it through playoffs first, yeah? Then we move on to the Las Vegas Aces, 27-13. You got to give this team flowers. This team is looking to not only maybe potentially have a rematch for the title, but to walk away with a title victory. We talked about it here on WNBA Today. This team had to weather some defensive storms. All of a sudden, they were kind of falling apart. Their play was getting spotty. We couldn't tell if they were going to be a team to contend if they didn't pull things together. They did so at the right moment. So you got the Vegas sitting in that fourth slot there, still able to contribute 27 wins to their record. Seattle Storm, this has been an interesting conversation around this team because defensively, they're not far off. They sit top 5 when it comes to their defense, but this is a defense that shows up for streaks and then all of a sudden kind of falls apart. We saw the Storm lose to teams that were sitting bottom of the league, bottom of any chance in playoffs, but the most important thing is the momentum and the consistency in the last 2 weeks, gearing up towards playoffs, and we've talked about it a number of times. One of the most important things when it comes to playoffs is your ability to perform on the road. So, another team to keep a close eye on. Who doesn't know the Indiana Fever and how they powered through to make sure they landed a spot, not just any spot, 3 spots up from the bottom, or the cutoff, I should say, to make sure that they get into this playoff mix, and they want to compete. They close out with a 2020 record. Obviously, Caitlin Clark being the largest conversation there, but it's not just Clark. We've talked about it so much. You've got Mitchell, you've got Boston, you've got a number of people that contributed to the success of this Indiana Fever team, but more importantly, to the momentum that they have found in the last 2 weeks. They have started to find an identity and a game that's very hard to compete against, and so when you've got a team that's hot, that has all the momentum on their heels to help them roll into a postseason, you can expect some surprises, but some of the sports books don't really have them having the element of surprise, but those first matchups, the first round is going to be crucial for a lot of these teams. And then speaking of cruciality, you've got the Phoenix Mercury. We didn't know where this team was going to land when it came to the playoff picture, to be honest. 19-21 record here, and another team that kind of snuck in there and stunted some of the top 4 teams, but it didn't last. So with that being said, we didn't know how well they were going to be able to get a chance to secure a playoff spot. There was a big tango between the Mercury and the Dream, especially because the Mystiques were trying to push through. And then Chicago Sky, we thought, hey, if health was on their side, maybe they could make the jump. That obviously didn't work out with their rookie going down, a big contributor when it comes to the offense. So you got Mercury landing their spot. And then the Atlanta Dream. Last week, I had them at plus money to make the playoffs, and it was not looking good there for a minute. Then you see them be able to at least get and secure a spot in the tops, well, not the top 5, but in the top 8 here, to say that they weren't supposed to be counted out. There were some moments, we'll get Coach on here later, where we thought that they were going to turn into this dream team. It didn't particularly last to the headline, but that's totally fine. And then as y'all see, these are the 4 teams that did not be able to log and secure when it comes to the final standings. and their win record. But let's see what this playoff picture molded into, or cemented into, as I like to say. Now we got some brackets. All the action gets ready to go on Sunday. Pretty excited. We talked about the format of this. It's very obvious, 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, and so on and so forth. So I feel like it feels almost obvious that you're going to have the top dogs knocking out the underdogs, but that's not always the case. And we will discuss the teams that you want to keep a close eye on. I already kind of threw some out there as we broke down the final standings. So initially, you've got the New York Liberty taking on the Atlanta Dream. Best of 3 is the format for this start for round 1. And we got Vegas taking on the Seattle Storm. If Vegas's defense does not show up, this can be a sneaky situation because the Storm does have a top 5 defense. And if they keep this team off the board, or if they isolate their top player in Wilson, not something that we've seen happen too consistently, but we did see a little stunt between the Storm and the Aces earlier in the season before the break. Then you've got the Lynx versus the Mercury. This is probably one of those battles that feel like a shoo-in. Most of the sports books have it being a 3-and-out situation where the Lynx come in, command all 3 games, and then move along. But I don't want to say it's going to be as easy as that. If we see them start resting top players, which some of these books are saying is going to happen, then it's not going to be as in and out as the Mercury just getting stumped by the Lynx and moving forward. Then you got the Sun taking on the Fever. This is probably one of the matchups where, as much as we all want to lean towards the Sun, their rankings, their consistency, and what they've done throughout this WNBA season, the Fever have the momentum. We talked about that a second ago. When you have all the momentum and you've got more key players that are healthy to be able to support Caitlin Clark, or vice versa, because Caitlin Clark is one of the assist queen of the league, and you have her ability to support her teammates to get points up. It's their defense that makes me a little concerned, especially going against the Connecticut Sun, who's probably more balanced on both sides of the ball. But regardless of that, this can end up being a closer game. So, of course, we're going to get the opinion of James Young coming up here soon. Outside of that, though, these are games where a lot of people are like, steer clear of the spread, maybe gauge the total. And then for a number of playoff games, rather than going with the over and those top scorers contributing so many points, a lot of them are talking about leaning towards the under, because top scorers, if it looks like it's a shoo-in for some of these teams, they're not going to have them out there for the entirety of the game, or they're going to probably calm down on how long they're in the game for, or how much they're going to contribute. They don't need 27, 28 points versus some of these matchups. That's just what I've been hearing in terms of what they want to focus on the book. So we got the final standings. We've got the playoff picture for Sunday. Now we've got to talk about title odds and how these odds have potentially changed around, how things have jumped. Once again, we know where I'm leaning when it comes to this topic. Sitting at the top of the charts, you've got the Liberty, who have very much earned and secured their right to sit at the top of the title odds at plus 125. Now, when you're looking at value and potential and teams that can sneak in the mix, Connecticut Sun are one of the top teams that sports books are saying do not underestimate this team. They have just enough to power through. They have just enough to go toe-to-toe. And in matchup equivalents, they can take on these top 2 teams and surprise people with a title position. Outside of that, you guys know that I'm really heavy on the Minnesota Lynx. I mean, their win record since coming back from the Olympic break, number 1. Their consistency on both sides of the ball, number 2. Most importantly, even though Collier is this tremendous player, they've got quite a bit of depth when it comes to getting some scoring done, and their defense is pretty adequate as well. So I think that they're the kind of team that can sneak in there. You got a couple of teams looking for that first title win, but when you're looking for value and a few upsets, Lynx and Sun, who I have sitting at the top when it comes to the title odds. So as promised, we're going to have James Young break some things down, share his bets as we get ready for some playoff WNBA ball. That all goes on Sunday starting at 1 p.m. and we cannot wait to see how the results pan out. And we're always rooting for an underdog. So we can't wait to get his opinion, gauge the odds and lines. There's 2 games that have had tremendous line movement, and a lot of that is pertaining to health, which has been a massive issue. So don't go anywhere. Stick with us here on WNBA Today on SportsGrid TV as we bring you all coverage preparing for playoffs on Sunday. Ravens starting their season 0-2, and I mean the numbers and what the market had eyeing this team heading into this season is probably almost up in flames at this point.
As their last however many games being down 10 plus points in the fourth quarter, inability to close out, getting picked apart by what is largely considered a below-average quarterback with a below-average receiving core.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Brew has already clinched the National League Central. They're 2 games behind LA, that being the Dodgers, trying to maybe get the 2nd seed in the National League standings for October.
Both of these teams have a chance to score some runs against these pitching matchups, so maybe another over, even though we do have a playoff atmosphere. And yes, Milwaukee did clinch, but there's still an eye on the prize of we might be able to chase down the Dodgers and also the Phillies to get one of those buys.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into WNBA today, and as promised, I have James Young with me. Coach's perspective is the key perspective, and while we're laying out the playoff format, the playoff rundown for round 1 getting going on Sunday, of course, we had a talk with Coach. Coach, how are you doing so far on this Friday?
Good to be on with you, Kasey. You know, we wrapped up the regular season. We have playoffs. We have interesting matchups, and I'm sure we'll get into who I think could be on upset alert in the first round.
Oh, and I hope I did justice by setting the table and saying that there's a couple underdogs that the books are liking, but you already kind of told me about some. I'm not going to spoil it, so let's just get this party started. We got the Dream taking on the Liberty, 1 p.m. on Sunday. Obviously, a lot of people think that this is a lockdown matchup for the Liberty. The Dream need their star players to just completely command and control the game, but what do you see in this one?
Well, this is a matchup that, you know, if you're the Liberty, you don't want to play with your food and you want to try and blow them out of the water early. So to me, when you start looking about where to go, you want to be nervous about the overall line, right? Because you worry about, could this game be a backdoor cover with a heavy line? So to me, if you're looking at anything, throw out the last game, which was last night, the 78-67 win by the Dream. I'm looking at the Liberty team total over in the first half to be 43.5 on FanDuel. They've scored 38, 62, 41 points. This is the best team offensively in the WNBA, not a strong team defensively in the Atlanta Dream. And if you're Sandy Bordello, Kasey, you want to get off to a fast start. That's the key. You don't want them to bleed. So I believe the first half, Liberty team total over 43.5 points is the way to go. They jump them early.
I love that. And just to stick with that for just a second, Coach, I'm hearing a lot of rumblings that star players will either not be participating or be removed from the lineup quite early. So does that kind of continue to stack to the fast start, hot start, and then move along when it comes to the rest of the game?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's why you get nervous about taking a full game, right? Mm-hmm. You know, because if you're Sandy Bordello and you're up by 20, points early in the fourth quarter, why are you playing Sabrina Ionescu? Why are you playing Brianna Stewart? You know, people like Benaja Hamilton, Courtney Vandersloot have battled injuries all year. So why would you risk it for a whole game? The other thing to look at, Kasey, is if the Liberty get off to a slow start, let's say they're tied after the first quarter, maybe jump on the Liberty at the end of the first quarter to win the second quarter. Maybe teams get off to a slow start, a little bit of nervous energy, jump on them in game. Stay away from the full game at all. Play Liberty after the end of the first quarter if they're struggling, or take them first half, or if it's something at halftime, maybe the third quarter. Coaches like to make big adjustments at the break. This will be a big series for an Atlanta team who, let's be honest, is playing better. Another thing to look at, I know it's minus money big, but we got to talk about Tina Charles. The ageless wonder, what she has done. Minus 155 for a double-double. If they're going to be in the game at all, Tina Charles double-double should be something you should be looking at.
Absolutely noted. Now, what about this? Because I was seeing a lot of people maybe locking in on Howard for over 15.5 points. Is that something that would be appealing for this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Howard is to stir that offense, right? When Ryan Howard, Gray, and obviously Tina Charles. But you want to cut the head off Snake. The only thing gets me nervous about Ryan Howard is, but Angelina Hamilton's arguably one of the best 3-and-D players in the WNBA. If she's healthy, they're going to try, and that's what you want to do as a coach. You want to cut the head off at the snake, which means you're going to have to look at, that's why I think the Tina Charles double-double is the other angle to do, or if you want to go points plus rebounds, because if I'm Sandy Bordello, I'm looking at knocking down Howard and limiting her opportunities to score and make other people try and beat me.
There we go. See, this is why we ask the expert and we shut down anything that's trending a little too heavy unless it makes sense. Speaking of things that make sense, we got the Fever versus the Sun, and you made some sense during the break when we were chatting about this matchup and what basketball fans should be anticipating. Clark, Boston, Mitchell, they look to continue the momentum that they've had after the Olympic break, but let me know what you see in this one. More importantly, is this the upset alert we were chatting about?
Folks, this is my best bet of the WNBA first round. I am taking the Indiana Fever to win this series. When you start looking at the fact of when these two teams played during the regular season, right? The first matchup, obviously June 14th, first game of the year. May 14th. Second game, May 20th, right? Third game, June the 10th. They played 3 of the 4 games before the Olympic break. They've been much better, Indiana, since the break, because to me, I think the ability of Caitlin Clark to get rest and understand what's going on and getting film. I love the Indiana Fever plus 154 to win this series. Here's why, folks. You got a closer in Caitlin Clark, and you got a half-court game, and you got a team that can't make threes. Pack it in, contest, get the first rebound. Caitlin Clark can steal this series. Indiana Fever win at plus 154.
Wow, so it looks like the Sun might lose their here comes the Sun moment, and all those predictions that said they were going to go 3 and out, well, keep a close eye on it. Then we got the Aces versus the Storm. Under 2 minutes here, Coach. What do you see in this matchup?
It's just a bad matchup for the Seattle Storm, a team that hasn't been good against the spread coming down the stretch. I think this is a point where we need to see the Las Vegas Aces start to turn it on. You look at Asia Wilson and arguably the best season in the history of the WNBA. But to me, Chelsea Gray, Jackie Young, Kelsey Plum, their ability to knock down threes should be important. Also, look at Gustafson down low as the 5 now that Kia Stokes out of the starting lineup. Give me the Aces minus 7.5, game 1.
Ooh, all right. That one feels like a shoo-in. And then any final quick thoughts for the Mercury versus Lynx? Is it as simple as Minnesota has been dominant? Minnesota's going to ride this one out.
You made a great point, Kasey, last segment. If there's a team that I'm looking at to win the WNBA title besides the Liberty, it's the Minnesota Lynx. They beat the Liberty head-to-head. They won the Commissioner's Cup. They have the best coach, should be the coach of the year in Cheryl Reeve. They have a top 3 player in Nafisha Collier. This is a dynamic team that can play half-court defense. Phoenix, all I got to say is, Diana Taurasi, thank you for the memories, but this is 2 and done.
See, you just made my Friday even better, Coach. Thank you so much for laying down the playoff format as well as the breakdown for this coming Sunday for us. And look, you made my day by saying we were on top of something when it comes to Minnesota. Coach, as always, thank you for your time. You guys go nowhere. Stick with us here on WNBA Today on SportsGrid. Ravens starting their season 0-2, and I mean the numbers and what the market had eyeing this team heading into this season is probably almost up in flames at this point.
Was that last however many games being down 10 plus points in the fourth quarter, inability to close it out, getting picked apart by what is largely considered a below average quarterback with a below average receiving core.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Crew has already clinched the National League Central. They're 2 games behind LA, that being the Dodgers, trying to maybe get the second seed in the National League standings for October.
Both of these teams have a chance to score some runs against these pitching matchups, so maybe another over, even though we do have a playoff atmosphere. And yes, Milwaukee did clinch, but there's still an eye on the prize of we might be able to chase down the Dodgers and also the Phillies to get one of those buys.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into WNBA Today here on SportsGrid TV. In case you missed it, we just had James Young breaking down all of the things for playoffs coming this Sunday, and just one better. He gave us an upset alert. Fever going all the way. So I would hate to see the Sun lose their here comes the sun moment, but who knows? This is why we gauge the books and make our best bets and see what goes down when tip-off comes about. But speaking of, Coach mentioned some top dog names. We've talked about the fact that when it comes to the Liberty, they might be sitting some of their top players. We know that you want to use them when it comes to the most important matchups in the playoff rally. But let's see where certain names lie when it comes to the finals MVP odds, how things have shaken up and switched over the last 2 weeks, performance-based, of course. Now, Brianna Stewart sitting at the top at plus 270. Wilson, no surprise, being at plus 310, nipping at the heels. And then, come on, guys, Collier plus 420. Who's not kind of putting a sprinkle on that? However you want to use it, beer money, hot dog money. Hot dogs are disgusting. Whatever you feel good about doing, put a little sprinkle when it comes to Collier in this conversation. Then you got Ionescu plus 750 and Jones at plus 1600. I think that this is rounded out beautifully. I mean, I know that some people are wondering how Caitlin Clark is not in the topic of conversation. I'm sure we'd see some sort of breach in the top 5 if the Fever do move out of that first round. But realistically, you've just got to give credit to what Wilson has done by throwing her team on her back to keep them momentously moving forward to be in a playoff conversation, let alone a title odd conversation. Then Stewart, hands down, has just been another figure who has thrown her team on her back in a number of situations. But when it comes to Collier, I mean, 5th in the league when it comes to scoring, 20.4 average, but then also 3rd in the league when it comes to rebounding. And if you caught the segment with Coach, he kind of led to the fact of how crucial rebounding is. And I will take it one step further and say how crucial rebounding is when you get into the postseason. So Collier just being one of those very well-rounded players, and of course the Minnesota Lynx just having a tremendous time after that Olympic break. I think that all the boxes just really check off when it comes to Minnesota, and Collier making a run and a really, really loud yell for that MVP slot. And excuse, she's somebody that I actually had at the top. If you would have talked to me almost a month ago, this is where I was leaning with this. I think that she's another very well-rounded player, somebody who has come in strategically and importantly for her team. I mean, regardless of injuries, regardless of anything else going on around, Sabrina has been able to be such a solid rock for her team. I mean, she was one of my top 2, again, about a month ago. And then Jones is another one. I mean, you can't knock off anybody from the Liberty. They sit at the top for a reason. And to have 30-plus wins, be the first team to 30 wins, it's obvious that they're a very dominant force to be reckoned with. But I already told you who I think might knock them off the top. And Coach told you who he thinks might knock them off the top. his bet's the Indiana Fever, and I'm going to continue to rock and roll when it comes to the Minnesota Lynx for my favorite odds. Now, kind of rolling back through some of the things that we talked to with Coach so that you guys have some betting angles and perspective when it comes to Sunday's Go. We've got a fun little potential parlay that a few sports books are gauging. Howard for that over 15.5 points. Coach wasn't exactly impressed by this. I'm right there with him. I mean, unless a massive game comes about, you have a few other key players that really have to kind of be the leaders in this sense. So this can be hit or miss, or it could hit very closely anywhere between 13 and 15 when it comes to Howard and her performance. INSQ under 26.5 points, rebounds, and assists. I like this because we've said it a number of times. Liberty aren't going to go all out with their key players. They're going to have them in for those crucial moments. They're going to gain their momentum, and then they're going to make sure that they rest the legs that are going to be necessary for round 2 and forward. And then after that, Brianna Stewart under 8.5 rebounds. They're not going to have to put up this massive defensive game. I'm not completely trying to count out their matchup whatsoever. I'm just saying, we don't know how long we're going to see the Stars for. We don't know what's going to happen after halftime calls it. So these are just things to gauge when you're looking at your bets for the weekend. Then a number of people have Connecticut Star to steal, or Stars, the Sun to steal this in 3. I just think that's an unfair bet. You're completely taking the air out of the tires of what the Fever have been able to produce, and you don't bet against teams that have all the momentum behind them. So I'm going to kind of swerve that trend of the Sun taking this whole playoff scenario in 3 games. As for another trend that people are leaning towards, it's going to be the under versus the spread in the Aces versus the Storm game. Coach said it. Storm is a hard team to gauge, and the Aces just seem to stack favorably against this team, but the Storm can kind of show up defensively in instances. They can be more consistent defensively. If they put up a big fight, then the under is a lot more appealing than the spread. The spread can really go anywhere. We've seen a number of line movement with certain players being out, injured, banged up, or questionable, so I'm going to go with that, and then also take Wilson to hit under on her scoring props because rest the legs of the Stars. So, big WNBA slate coming down on Sunday, but most importantly, postseason playoffs. The fun really gets going, which means you want to continue your WNBA coverage with us here on SportsGrid TV, and let us know what best bets you're looking forward to over on SportsGrid on X. As for myself, Kasey Hudson, and WNBA Today, we'll catch you guys next Friday.
It's a new era in CFP to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoffs.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards.
That was
Lincoln!
But he had that program was already going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
Crew has already clinched the National League Central. They're 2 games behind LA. That being the Dodgers, trying to maybe get the 2nd seed in the National League standings for October.
Both of these teams have a chance to score some runs against these pitching matchups, so maybe another over, even though we do have a playoff atmosphere. And yes, Milwaukee did clinch, but there's still an eye on the prize of we might be able to chase down the Dodgers and also the Phillies to get one of those buys.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Brian Daboll has been feeling it. He's in a foul mood. He's having stare-downs with Pat Leonard and everything else.
John Mara wants Brian Daboll to go and get the next quarterback. They tried to get the next quarterback. We all watched it on Hard Knocks. They couldn't end up with Daniels. They couldn't end up with May. So they said, okay, we'll run it back a year. We'll go get Neighbors, and we'll tolerate.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
This would have been a bet that I would have lost big on in terms of betting on Trevor Lawrence thus far. Because, Vinny, I thought he was an absolute rock-solid, can't-miss first overall pick.
They're underachieving a bit. I mean, I don't think this is the best adjustment team with Doug Peterson. He's not the best adjuster. If everything's kind of falling into place and everyone's executing well and he can just do what they want to do.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.